Most people have the system design process completely backwards, and it's costing them time, money, and headaches. I'm going to break down the real way to design systems that actually works and highlight the key mistakes you're probably making without even knowing it. Plus, I'm going to show you how never to get stuck chasing shiny new tools again. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to build systems that support you instead of slowing you down. But first, let's talk about some common mistakes that people quite often make when they're developing systems. The first one is that they try to use their own broken systems and just band-aid it. The challenge with this is that it's not going to solve the ultimate solution, which could include how people are experiencing the system. If you are trying to band-aid your broken system, in most cases, you will find people will try to bypass that system and not use it because it's not working. People tend to try to band-aid their broken systems is because it does take some time to build a really quality system up front. When you take time to build a quality system, the output is worth the time it took. So yes, I know systems take a little bit of time up front to build, but you're going to get so much more efficient and so much more faster if you have a quality system than you are using your broken system and trying to band-aid it. Another mistake that I see people making all the time is that it is so easy to chase all of these nice, bright, shiny tools. I love tools. I love the latest and greatest new app that's going to do this, the latest and greatest new software that's going to do that. When you're building systems, while it's great to integrate tools, you should not be building your systems around great tools. Your system should be designed and then incorporate great tools into your system. And so let's build the system designed how we want and then find the right software that's going to help drive that system to success. Another problem that I see is when people just decide that the system's not working and they just ditch the whole thing rather than going through and evaluating why it's not working. If you know the system's broken and you're trying to band-aid it, that's very different than having a system in place and then completely scrapping it because it's not working the way that you expected it to work. In those cases, you are often left rebuilding system after system, and none of them are going to quite achieve what you want because your tools aren't working together, people or processes aren't working well within it. Instead of scrapping it, actually taking the time to really understand what it is that you're after, you end up just recreating broken wheel after broken wheel and not knowing why it's broken. Let's talk about system templates. Okay, I'm a sucker for watching how people are designing other systems. And I love a good template and I love a good structure. And in some very rare cases, pre-built templates, systems, and processes have worked for me, but it's not very common. One of the challenges I see is that people grab someone else's system because it's working for them, and then they just try to bend their life, their business, their whatever it is around that pre-built system, rather than tweaking it to something that would actually work more for them and their business or in their life. So while we love templates and I love sharing and providing templates, please don't ever force yourself to live on that template and work through that process. Be open to the idea that the template or the structure that you're taking on is a really good baseline to start from, but you should tweak that to something that's more custom to you. Here's another one I love so much. People are using the system and then somebody just bypassed the system. When you build a system and people just bypass that system and they don't tell you why, you don't know what to fix. How are you supposed to know what the problems are in your system if people are just bypassing it without reporting? So when it comes to building systems, one of the really important things is tracking when people are bypassing that system so that you can understand what it is about the system that they're trying to bypass. Do they think that the system's just taking longer than it would if they just did XYZ? Is it too slow to process something? Is it that they don't understand how the system works? Once you capture all of those reasons why people are bypassing, that's going to help you enhance whatever system you're building. And it'll help you enhance the current system that you're working on too. This is my favorite. Have you heard of antiquated systems? Yeah. That is very common. People will put up a system once, it works, it's fixed, but the problem is those systems can end up being so antiquated that they're losing out on efficiency when you're not evaluating it. So every system you design should absolutely go through a period of evaluation. How frequently that evaluation is depends on the system that you're building and what it is that you're looking to experience or the experience that you're looking to provide and how optimal and efficient. Now, one caveat here, tech is advancing so quickly. So it's really more critical, I think, personally, that we look at our systems a little more closely and maybe a little bit more frequently than we otherwise would, especially with all the tech advances and the new software that's coming out to help make things even more efficient and quicker. Okay, so we've covered a lot of the mistakes that happen. It's either using templates that don't work for you, pre-built systems, processes, things like that that aren't functioning for you or your business. You're building broken systems that aren't getting you or your clients or your teams the experience that they want. And now that we've covered all of that, I'm going to share with you how I personally think about system. It doesn't start with what do I want to have happen, meaning what thing do I want to have the end result to be? I actually start a little bit differently. We start with the experience first, and then we think about what the process is that's involved, and then all the ways that we can automate or delegate to make everything as efficient and as easy as possible. That is the goal of every single system that I design and develop. Let's start with the first thing that I think about. which is what do I want my client or my customer experience to be? When somebody is using this system, how do I want them to feel about it? Do I want them to feel that things were easy, that things were connected? Maybe they only had to do one thing and then all of a sudden everything just came out on its own. So whatever that experience is that I want my customer or my client or family member or coworker, whoever I'm designing this system for, what do I want them to feel when they're using this system? After I've really nailed down what it is I want my customer or client to experience, the next question is, what do I want my experience to be? What do I want my team's experience to be? What kind of things do we want to have happen in this system? I start thinking about my experience, my team experience, and that is the next step. When you're starting with an experience first concept, it really gives you a bigger, broader picture of exactly what it is that you're trying to develop for. Now, you obviously can't get perfect all the time, and it doesn't mean that experience that you're designing is always going to be the outcome that you're going to get, but it's your North Star, and that's what you're going to be building towards. The next step after we've designed our experience is to design what that process map looks like. The reason why we do process map is to get the bird's eye view of everything that goes into the process. I like to map out the process. What do I want the process to look like? What are all of the key big milestone steps that have to happen? And then I'll dive a little bit deeper and say, what are all the other little steps that have to happen? We don't need to talk about the software here because we're not there yet, but we do need to know that if we're going to be creating something, we need to create the general process overall. Once you have your process map, you now have an idea of everything that has to go into the system to make sure you're going to get the output that you're looking for. And it also identifies all the key inputs that you'll need. So when you have your inputs defined, the process map built and designed, then you have your outputs. I would outline those key milestone steps just so that I have an over idea of what all needs to go into the process for this system to be functional. Once you get the key milestone steps, then you want to dive a little bit deeper. Here's where we start thinking about what are the things that need to happen within each milestone step for it to actually function. And sometimes it's easier to work on one milestone at a time, in which case you can just work on the milestone pieces. But what we're looking for are what are the specific actions that have to happen. Once you've outlined all of those steps and you've really identified within each key milestone the specific steps that are needed, this is where we open the door for the next step. Okay, so we built from the experience first. And we started thinking about customer experience, and then we built our experience. Now we have the idea of what needs to go into. So all the steps that need to happen for the inputs and the outputs to be what you want it to be. Okay, so now that we've mapped everything out, so I can think through what I want to delegate, what I want to automate, and what I want to personally handle, which should stay manual processes. I've listed that out, and now we're looking at tools. I love tools. And yes, I know tools are super exciting because there's so many different features that they have, and tech is just getting better and better. So once you've drawn out your process mapping, then you start asking yourself, what is the most efficient way that I can get this done? How can this happen with the least amount of effort possible? That's where you start tool shopping. The tools fit to the process, not the other way around. We don't want to try to pick a new fancy tool and then subject ourselves to trying to fit that tool into our process. That's just not going to work for you. One more caveat I want to share about tools is just because a tool offers a specific feature, it does not mean that you should find a way to use that feature. If you end up trying to use features that are provided by the tool just because they exist, you could end up with a clunky, overly complex process that people will choose to actually bypass because it's just not working how they expected. Thinking about tools, we want to think about two things. One, what are all the areas that we can automate? Two, what data or storage that we need to be using in it? And I guess really three, what's the experience? Because again, it all goes back to the experience. What tool is going to help us give that experience that we were designing for? I'm thinking about what tool is going to do the things that I need it to do? What tool has the most automated pieces so that I'm not spending the time actually doing it? It's going to store the data that I want it to store. And most importantly, it's going to provide the experience that I want it to provide for my customer, my client, and myself. Now I'm putting my tools into the system and I'm using the tools for the system. The system itself is designed for optimum experience for your customer, for your client, or for yourself. So for example, when I start thinking about what website I wanted to use for my business, I wanted something that was going to be super efficient. I was going to be able to store all of my products within it. So that way I didn't have to band-aid different software. I wanted to have the CRM inside of it. I wanted to be able to have all of the emails and newsletters and coaching notes within that software. And I wanted to automate everything as much as possible. So then I was looking at what software I wanted to build. I went for a platform that does all the things that I'm looking to design in the business overall. Now, that's a little more broad than just a particular process. I think once you start working through the processes, then you can start thinking more broadly. My point here is you match the tools to the outcomes and the experience that you want to have in the system design. Now, here's one last section that's really critical for every system: feedback. If people are bypassing the system, they're not happy with the system, or things aren't working, you have to know that stuff so that you can actually go in and reevaluate what needs to happen, or if there's a tool change that needs to happen. The last piece of all of this is just your monitoring, which is pretty classic for any system. So designing a system is not about picking the shiniest tool. It's about starting with a vision and having a very clear idea of what you want that experience to be, then understanding the process, and then bringing in the tools to help support and make that a reality. If you found this video helpful, please let me know in the comments below. And if you're interested in following to learn more about systems, tools, AI automation, and how to be the most productive and efficient person you can be, please feel free to like and subscribe. And just remember, every day we are creating space in our lives.